What's up, guys? And I am once again back to talk about Penn State football. And today, the Nittany Lions were able to win on Senior Day at home, and they advanced to 7-4. They beat the Rutgers Scarlet Knights, who were 5-5 going into this game, 28-0. And any college football fan who knows Penn State compared to Rutgers, they're going to think, if they didn't watch this game, they're going to say, oh, well, Penn State, they underperformed in the first half. They came to play in the second half. Not what happened at all, in my opinion. Okay, this game, it's leaving. I imagine every single person who watches Penn State, every fan, everyone who watches this team on a consistent basis, they're most likely sitting here and asking themselves questions about what could have happened if different things played out this season. I'm just going to get right to the chase, okay? Christian Veilleux, all right? Christian Veilleux came in for Sean Clifford, and this offense looked dead in the water with Clifford. And then Christian Veilleux, a freshman who hadn't played in an organized game of football since 2019, because he wasn't able to play football all last year at his high school because of COVID, he comes into the game, and he just completely rejuvenizes this offense. And all of a sudden, Penn State, they just take off. Okay? And take off, take that phrase how you will. It's not, they didn't come out and score 55 points in the first half, or 49 in the case of Ohio State when they played the 7th-ranked team in the freaking nation. That is insane. Props to them. But nevertheless, their offense looked much better in first organized game of football going up against a Big Ten defense since 2019. I mean, you got to give the kid props, okay? Personally, from what I saw from Veilleux today, there are two things I can conclude about Veilleux. One is I feel like it's only one game, so I can't sit here and definitively say this, but the way it looks is that Veilleux is actually a better quarterback than Sean Clifford. He looks slightly, and I mean slightly more mobile, right? He doesn't panic, right? He's cool and collected under pressure, okay? And yes, one of the touchdowns that he scored was basically a free touchdown because, I mean, it was the freshman tight end. The man wasn't even covered. But compared to what Sean Clifford did with this offense they're playing the exact same team. From what Sean Clifford did with this offense and how it looked with Veilleux, it's hard not to argue that Veilleux at QB would have won this game if he was in instead of Traquan Robertson against Iowa, and they would have won this game in an ugly way, but nevertheless have won against Illinois, which would therefore give them 2 more wins. And you can even argue maybe Michigan. But nevertheless, Veilleux, he looked very well. I'm very pleased of what he's done, and he looks much better than Roberson. But please tell me, who had Roberson above this man on the depth chart? Who had a say in that? James Franklin. Which is what a lot of fans, including myself, tend to blame for the Iowa loss. They'll say, if Clifford was in the game, we definitely would have won. That's true. But we still should have won with Roberson. I've said that multiple occasions, and the reason why we didn't is because the coaching did him no favors, right? And we just did not play disciplined football, and that's why we lost that football game. We should have won that game with Roberson. But Christian Veilleux, he showed me a lot today. And he didn't look like a quarterback who necessarily looks like, Tommy Stevens coming off the bench, or, what you typically see from David Ewers when he comes and plays for Ohio State. But it really wasn't that far off, because I really think that Veilleux did a solid job with this offense. And you can argue, yes, the offensive line and the running game has not helped Clifford at all this year, because our running game is basically non-existent. The offensive line, especially the left and right tackle, it's just abysmal. But Christian Veilleux had the same team around him, the same resources, and he performed that much better. What does that tell you about Sean Clifford? I always thought that he, wasn't terrible, but he just wasn't that great, and I really feel like today proved that, okay? But we need to get into more topics of this game, okay? So, they did not score a touchdown, or any points whatsoever, until almost halftime. They got it at the very end of the second quarter. And let me tell you, I do not know how. I don't care. I do think Sean Clifford is just an average quarterback at best. But just how do you not score any points at home on Senior Day against the Rutgers Scarlet Knights? Their program's on the rise, okay? If they win next week, they'll probably make a bowl game. And props to them, because they used to be the basement of the Big Ten and the laughingstock of Division I college football, basically. But not anymore. I mean, they've really improved this team to probably the best that they could. And I really wish that that type of fight and that type of effort was in this Penn State team. Because from what I see, James Franklin, I want you to tell me, what has he done? Name me one example from one game throughout his coaching career of the Penn State Nittany Lions. Tell me one thing that this man did that positively affected the team. Because as far as I'm concerned, most of the time this man does nothing to positively or negatively affect the team and is therefore just some public figure claiming to be a head coach. Or he negatively affects the team and does not do them any favors. Today is a great example of that. Because this talent bailed them out. Jahan Dotson, we targeted him 3 times in the first half. 3 times. He is arguably the best receiver in the nation. I don't think anyone's going to debate that this man isn't at least top 5 and top 3 in the Big Ten. Okay? So I just ask why. I know sometimes he's double covered, but today he wasn't a lot. But I know sometimes he's double covered, but why do we only throw this man the ball as if he's a freshman receiver who's somehow starting? I don't understand that whatsoever. But James Franklin really got bailed out today again, just like he did against Maryland. Okay? Jahan Dotson makes Sean Clifford. Parker Washington makes Sean Clifford. Okay? Christian Veilleux was Christian Veilleux himself. Okay? Parker Washington had a great catch in the end zone. But overall, Christian Veilleux, his triumphs were because of him. And that's something that I rarely see from Sean Clifford, unless if he goes up against a team against Villanova. And even still, we only won that game by 21 points at home. Okay? It's a miracle that we won today, just because, honestly, we can't win when it's homecoming day. So I'm surprised we won on senior day. Any time it's a type of day in State College, you can imagine that the other team is going to have a field day, because that's just how it goes around here, I guess. But Veilleux performed well because of himself. All right, he utilized his weapons. They helped him. But overall, what he did, the positivity he brought to this team was because of him. That's something that I rarely see from Sean Clifford. All right? Now, this team, every single year, whenever they lose one game, you lose one game, cool. If you win out, you could still make the college football playoff and the Big Ten championship. There's still a pretty solid chance of that, right? No, not with Penn State. Because literally every single year and every single time, we lose just one game. It doesn't matter if we get blown out. It doesn't matter if it's an upset. It doesn't matter if we barely lose. We lose one game, and the motivation and confidence in this team just tanks every single time. They're moping onto the field. Moping. It doesn't even look like they want to be there. And that's how it looked today in the first half. Veilleux brought a new energy to this team. But if Clifford stayed in this ball game, I genuinely think we would have only won this game by about 10 points. This was a pretty competitive game up until the fourth quarter. If Veilleux wasn't in there, it would have been a competitive game until halfway through the fourth quarter. That's just my belief. Because I just need to see... I need to see more motivation from this team. I get you're really only playing for pride at this point and to not humiliate yourselves and to potentially get a better bowl game, because you're probably not going to be ranked even if we win next week in Michigan State. But I need to understand, I need to comprehend why every single time we lose one game, this team just falls off a cliff. The motivation goes down the hill. It looks like they don't even want to be there, and they just escape with wins, and they just look so uninspired. Who's the coach every single season since we made the Big Ten championship game? James Franklin. And every single season after we lost our first game, the motivation has gone down. You cannot tell me that doesn't have something to do with the coaching. Because James Franklin, he goes into the interview and he's saying how proud he is of Sean Clifford, right? Obviously, he's a coach. But do you really think he believes that? Do you really think he thinks this performance is acceptable from Clifford? In my opinion, it's not. Okay? He gets bailed out by Jahan Dotson. Jahan Dotson makes Sean Clifford. If we didn't have Jahan Dotson, we would have lost that Maryland game, and we probably still would have won this game, but we would have lost 5 out of 6. This would have been our first game since the Indiana win. That was in early October. Okay? Now, I just want you to look at this from this perspective. Ohio State, at the time I'm recording this video, they are winning 55 to freaking 6 against Michigan State. All right, I expected Ohio State to win, and I would not have been surprised if they won handily. But my goodness, they went out there and they dropped 49 points in the first half against a top 7 team, the 7th ranked team in the nation. Oh my God. Right? In Penn State, we played in Columbus as well, in an environment that may have been slightly more energized because it was Saturday Night Football, and we lost by 9 points. Now, I don't think Penn State would have won this game with good coaching, but I think it would have been a closer game with good coaching because Franklin didn't do anything negative, but he did nothing positive. He was just there, and he was really a public figure. Right? If Sean Clifford didn't crap his pants every single time he has to make a clutch play against a team that isn't barely top 25, like Auburn, per se, and we just had decent coaching, and we didn't get in our own way, that was more of a winnable game than I think people are giving Penn State credit for. They deserve credit for what it was, for only a 9-point loss. And they fought hard. They always played Ohio State to a pretty tough level. It doesn't matter if it was like last year when Penn State started 0-5, or if it's 2019 whenever they were good, but definitely not good enough to beat Ohio State. They always play them tough. It sucks in 2017 and 2018 they can't finish the job, and Franklin, especially in 2018, definitely has something to do with that. But I truly need to understand how Penn State can do that, but they lose to Iowa on the road. Why? Coaching. They would have won with Clifford, but the coaching had to do with why Roberson was not confident, and we didn't do the man any favors. We do that against Ohio State, but the week before that, we lose to Illinois at home in 9 overtimes. All we had to do is outscore them in one of those 9 overtimes, or maybe play decent football in the first half. Don't give me the weather. Don't give me that the weather was somewhat bad that game. No. All we had to do was one of those two things, and we would go out with a win against Illinois. We don't do that, but we beat Ohio State by 9. And we play Michigan, okay? Logically, if Michigan State beat Michigan, and Michigan State just lost 55 to 6 in Columbus, then you would think it'd be a pretty similar score whenever Ohio State goes to Ann Arbor next week and plays Michigan. But so if we only lost to Ohio State by 9, how the heck do we manage to lose to Michigan at home? That doesn't make logical sense. Because if you're going to go up and play up the competition against Ohio State in a game that, was fairly winnable and was a competitive game, definitely, how are you going to sit here and tell me that it is excusable that you just lost to the Michigan Wolverines, good football team, but if they lost to Michigan State and Michigan State is losing by 49 at the time I'm recording this video in Columbus, and Penn State went to Columbus on Saturday Night Football after they lost 2 games in a row and most likely are deflated and they only lost by 9 points, then how are we going to lose to the team that lost to Michigan State that's losing by 49 right now? I need an explanation for that, okay? That does not make any sense. This team makes no sense. They lose to Iowa. They would have won with Sean Clifford at quarterback. They still should have won with Roberson. They lose to Illinois. Now, Illinois beat Minnesota. They're a competitive game right now with Iowa as I speak. But please, you should not be losing to the Illinois Fighting Illini with the type of recruiting that you have. You should not be losing to the Illinois Fighting Illini if you're a team that's in the Big Ten and is seen as a higher prestige of the conference above them. You should not be losing to the Illinois Fighting Illini at home in a homecoming game whenever you have the student section loud as can be in 107,000 people. The only stadium bigger in North America is the stadium in Ann Arbor. Please explain to me how we lost to Illinois. Please. Explain to me how that was not part of the reason shared because of Sean Clifford and because of James Franklin. The run defense was terrible, but the most consistent reason why we lose these football games is because of James Franklin and Sean Clifford, and those two things primarily stand alone. That was proven today by Christian Veilleux, okay? They looked the way they should have looked from about midway through the third quarter on. But that's because of the energy that Veilleux brought to the team and because of the talent, because we simply have more talent than Rutgers. So you would expect for us to win, okay? But this team does not do anything that makes logical sense whatsoever. They do nothing that makes logical sense. Every single week I sit here and I have to wonder what would have happened if we just had a quarterback who wasn't overrated, but honestly, if we had decent coaching, heck, Yes, decent coaching, but if we had good coaching, we would have at least 2 more wins right now, arguably 3, because Michigan, I believe, was a game that Penn State should have won too, and they really could have won against Ohio State, but at the end of the day, I don't see that as a loss that's terrible or something. Ohio State, even if Penn State were to take the lead late with good coaching and better quarterbacking, I still think Ohio State would have came out with, a late W, game-winning touchdown drive. But still, how? This team is 7-4. They should be 9-2 at worst. Okay? This team has the talent level to go to Columbus and lose by 9, and to play Michigan State in a game that they honestly should have won at home and lose by 4. But then they do this in the first half against Rutgers when they're at home. They lose to Illinois when they're at home. And then they go to Iowa and they can't win with a backup quarterback who's Division I. Tell me, why was he starting over Veyu? If Veyu's in that game, we win that football game, James Franklin. This man has not played a snap of competitive football since 2019, has not had a snap in college football in his entire career. And he looks better than Sean Clifford. He gives his team more motivation than Sean Clifford. He plays exactly the way this team should have played against Rutgers throughout the entire game. I need an explanation because we're too scared. We just settle for things. We can't settle for things. Just because Joe Paterno left this football team in shambles, and you can argue whether it was his fault or not, but it definitely left this team in shambles and this program in shambles. Just because he did that doesn't mean that we should be accepting that if our football team is 7-4 when we have talent and recruiting very similar to Ohio State. If we had a number 1 recruiting class this year, and don't get me wrong, those players aren't playing for us yet. But if James Franklin's the head coach, I don't think we'll win a national championship with that team. I don't even think we'll win a Big Ten championship with that team. Because if James Franklin's the head coach, this systemic underachieving, this systemic lack of motivation after we lose a game, no matter what fashion we lose that game in, is just going to continue. Okay? We can't settle. Because we are a team that should be up there with Ohio State. We're a team that should be ranked with Michigan and Michigan State, right? We should honestly be better than Michigan and most likely be better than Michigan State. But we're not. Because here, we're sitting here, you just saw what happened in Columbus. Penn State only lost by 9. Okay? That right there proves to me that they are the better football team than Michigan. And they are most likely the better football team than Michigan State. But I can almost promise you that we're going to lose to Michigan State next week. And I'm very sorry. Okay? If Christian plays next week, if Christian Veyu plays, I honestly think we will have a better chance than what we do with Sean Clifford. And I do think that maybe Veyu could lead us to victory. And it's sad that Clifford got injured because don't get me wrong, you don't like to see that whether you think the player is great or not. But we're the better football team, but here we are, and we're 7-4. I get that the best team doesn't always win, but it happened 3 times. The better team lost, and it was the coach, James Franklin. Okay, Jim Harbaugh has a 4-3 record against James Franklin. Heck, the year whenever Penn State won the Big Ten championship, we got blown out by Michigan. Jabril Peppers was our biological father. And I just need an explanation. This team is a top 15 team in the nation, talent-wise, with Sean Clifford at quarterback. But we have James Franklin sitting on this pedestal, accepting for us, assuming that we're going to accept that just because almost a decade ago our football program was in shambles and we found a way to revive it and now it's on the decline again, we're supposed to accept that? No! We have the recruiting that's better. We're not a 7-4 quality team. I get we play in the Big Ten, which in my opinion is the second toughest conference to play in college football, aside from the SEC, obviously. But I just need an explanation. I get people have off games. But Penn State does this every single year. And this year was the worst, the absolute worst case scenario for what could have happened. Okay, this team should be a team that's top 15 right now, even with Clifford at quarterback. I'd like to see what would happen if Veyu was the starting quarterback this whole year. I just would like to see it, because obviously it's one game. I can't sit here and proclaim he's better than Sean Clifford, but I have my suspicions that he is. So I just need explanation. If we lose to Ohio State by 9, and we're competitive almost the entire game with them, on Saturday Night Football, whenever we lose 2 games in a row and are getting clowned by the media by losing to Illinois, with Sean Clifford as quarterback, a man who's notoriously unclutch against teams that aren't barely ranked in the top 25. Please explain why we lost to Iowa. I don't care if Roberson was in the game. Why we lost to Illinois at home and why we lost to Michigan at home. Because Michigan's probably going to get blown out next week by Ohio State. I'll root for Michigan, but I'm accepting it. There's a 99% chance that's going to be a blowout. I don't care if it's in Ann Arbor. And Michigan State, if we lose next week, they just lost they just lost by 49 points, unless if the score changed from the time I'm recording this video, to a team that we only lost to by 9 points in the same exact environment. The same stadium in front of the same fans. So as far as I'm concerned, all of this proves to me that Penn State truly is the better football team than Michigan State and Michigan. They're obviously the better team than Iowa and Illinois. But instead we're going to have James Franklin sitting here crying about, oh, the rankings are so unfair. To an extent, I agree with you. I think that it's so biased who they put in the top 4 every single year. It's so biased. We need a new playoff system. And I agree with Franklin to an extent, but I don't believe Penn State should have been ranked. I really do not. This man has been bailed out by talent the past 2 games he's played. Don't make it a mistake. Sure, we didn't allow any points. That was a great defensive performance. But tell me one thing that Franklin did in this game that affected the outcome of it in a positive way. He didn't do anything negative, but he did nothing positive. He was just there. He was just a public figure. And that's all that I see this man as. People can call me insane for wanting him gone. Heck, I'd be willing to give up a year to look for a head coach or to reestablish, our head coach and get our feet wet with a new head coach that we truly believe can do something, because this is systemic. James Franklin has become a systemic issue. It's obviously not as bad, but it's almost like Antonio Brown with the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? That was cancerous. And what do you do when you have cancer? You have to try to take it out. You have to try your absolute best to take it out. And I don't see James Franklin as any sort of positivity to this team. Right? Ryan Day, I like that coach. Ryan Day has his team ready to play no matter who they're playing. Okay? And if for some reason they aren't in the first quarter, you better believe they get their crap together. And Penn State does not do that. And when they do, it's because of the talent that they have. When they do, it's because of Jahan Dotson carrying us against Maryland, or Christian Veilleux giving us new energy against Rutgers at home, and just Jahan Dotson and Parker Washington being amazing, and Rutgers somewhat, blowing coverage on that 167-yard touchdown to the freshman tight end. But I just need explanation, James. I really do. Because this team is not a 7-4 caliber football team. It's truly not far-fetched to say that this team, I think everyone in the country should say they should have at least 2 more wins, so 9-2 at worst. I believe they should have Michigan 10-1, and it's truly not that far-fetched to say that if they had great coaching, the type of coaching that they should have with the reputation that they hold, not the reputation that they used to have after the Paterno scandal, but the reputation that they have in college football now. Their overall reputation, not just, recency-biased reputation. With just the amount of talent that we have, it's truly not that hard to see that if we just had great coaching, the type of coaching that should be in the organization and the football team of the Penn State Nittany Lions, that should already be there because of the talent and the players and everything that we have and the prestige that we hold in college football. When you have all of that, it's not hard to imagine that this team could be 10-1 at worst. Maybe if things went right with Ohio State, if they just had above average quarterback play that game with Clifford, if they just had great coaching, it's not that far-fetched to think that they maybe could have won that game. And they could be 11-0. But I'm gonna be moderate, 10-1. They could be 10-1 right now. Okay? What if Michigan were to beat Ohio State next week and we were 10-1? Wouldn't that suck? Ohio State would have 1 Big Ten loss, and Penn State would also have 1. Man, that's tough to swallow. And Michigan would be in the Big Ten championship game. That's tough to swallow, assuming they win today, of course. It would have just been such a waste if we just would have had better awareness of where our football team is at, better coaching, and just not have a quarterback who, in my opinion, is overrated in Sean Clifford. This team, it does not make any sense. What they did against Ohio State proves to me that they are a better football team than Michigan. They're a better football team than Michigan State, which was especially proven today because they just got blown out of the water. In the same exact environment that Penn State only lost in only lost by a total of 9 points in. And they're obviously better than Iowa and Illinois, but here we are, 7-4. That's definitely has something to do with the coaching right there. All right, we won. I'm happy that we won. And I love Christian Veilleux. And I'd like to see what he would do next week if he starts. I genuinely want to see what would happen if he starts. I hope we start him regardless if Clifford's there or not. You have nothing to lose. You can play spoiler, but you really have nothing to lose. So I truly just, and it would be good as well because we could see, especially if he wins, is he the quarterback of the future? Is he going to be that next McSorley? We don't know that. He could be. We do not definitively know that. Roberson definitely is not. And I don't know why he was the second quarterback on the depth chart against Iowa because we would have won this game with Veilleux, but we still should have won with Roberson. But it's very mind-boggling. Penn State gets the win. Obviously I'm happy because of that, but I'm always gonna be an activist to get James Franklin the heck out of here because he does not do this team any favors, and it's just mind-boggling to me that some people think that he's still an above-average head coach in college football. This game really should have proved otherwise. This season especially should really prove otherwise. He just gets carried by talent. He doesn't do anything special. He's really just there. Good job to this team. Good job to Christian Veilleux. Thanks for all the seniors and Beaver Stadium for all the hard work. It's nice to see the fans back there for this year for the final home game. And we'll be back next year. And hopefully, I always want people to have a good well-being. I hope James Franklin will get rehired somewhere where the expectation is what he would bring, such as LSU or USC. But I really want to see this man gone, and I hope he is next time we step foot in Beaver Stadium to play a collegiate football game. And I really hope that next year, that's finally the year where this doesn't happen, because this team, really, truly, talent-wise, they are not far off from taking that step to maybe making the college football playoff, to at least competing for the playoff at this stage in the year. And it's truly frustrating. So thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like the video if you enjoyed it, share it if you if you appreciate my reaction. Leave your thoughts in the comment section. I'm always willing to interact with you, and if you have a different opinion, respectfully debate you. And I truly appreciate you guys. I like having this platform. It's a blessing. I'm never going to take it for granted, and with that being said, I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day, evening, whenever you're watching this. We are.